Hey guys, back here with another Think Aloud. This time we're going to take a look at the science practice test for the GED. Just like the other videos, the link to this site will be in the description of the video, so if you want to practice yourself later, you can. So on this front page, it does give you some nice suggestions that you can take a look at. It says you should not spend too much time on a question, right? Do the best you can, go on to the next one. It's a time test. You don't have forever. If you're not certain of the answer, you can mark it using flag for review, and you can come back at the end and check those again. And then make sure you read each page. Sometimes there's more than one page to the reading, so they want you to make sure you see all of them. All right, so let's go ahead and take a look at our questions today. So question number 1, first thing I notice, big map. Say, okay. Anytime you see a reading, it doesn't matter if it's paragraphs or something like a map, read the title. So I see my title right at the top here. It says continents, plates, and volcanoes on Earth. All right, so yeah, I see the Earth, I see the continents. Down here, I see the map key. So the yellow dots are volcanoes, the black lines, plate boundary lines, and the red lines, that equator. Say okay. And then the description at the top. The map shows Earth's continents, the outlines of the plates that make up Earth's outer shell, and the location of volcanoes. So you can see the volcano lines throughout the map. All right, so let's take a look at the question then. What conclusion can be reached from the information on the map? So we need to look through each of these answers, make sure we read them all, make sure we're finding the best answer. So letter A, the volcanoes are scattered randomly across the Earth. Well, I don't know. This doesn't look too random to me, right? These are kind of specific lines that I'm seeing. So this idea of random, I don't think that's correct. So I'm gonna knock out that answer choice. Letter B, volcanoes are only located along edges of continents. Well, that's true here. There's an edge of a continent. But there's one here, there's one here, one here. So I don't like this word only. Anytime I see only or always or all, I always stop and think, do we know for sure 100% that's true? Chances are we don't. And in this case, we definitely know that's not true because we have several examples of ones that are not on the edges of continents, so it can't be B. Letter C, volcanoes are mostly located along boundaries between plates. Well, mostly, that's better than only. So boundaries between plates. Well, we said the black lines indicate the plate boundaries, and yeah, it kind of looks like most of the volcanoes are along those black lines. So I like that one, but let's wait and read D just in case. Volcanoes are distributed equally in the northern and southern hemispheres. Distributed equally. Maybe. It's kind of hard to tell, but I think there's a bit more up top than there are at the bottom. So I don't think it's answer D. I think it's going to have to be answer C. And we can hit our answer explanation, and it tells us that we are correct. And again, if you want to practice this yourself, you can read the descriptions on each one of those. Question 2, another little chart. Again, first thing, I read that title. So it says energy pyramid, and sure enough, yep, that's a pyramid. So the thing about pyramids is that they are bigger at the bottom than they are at the top. So I notice that's quite a bit bigger than that section. So if I'm looking at the names of each section, so producers is a lot bigger than tertiary consumers. Now you say, what in the world is the word tertiary? We do not use that word very often. And the good news is it doesn't matter. Sometimes when we see words we don't know, don't stress about them. Just read the question. It may not even be important. So let's read. It says the diagram below shows a typical energy pyramid. Which statement correctly describes the flow of energy through this pyramid? Okay, so think about it like a food pyramid, you know, where you have the big one at the bottom, which is the big important one. It gets smaller at the top. So let's read these examples, or these answers. Letter A, all of the energy from the lower levels is available at the top level. Well, we said the lower levels are bigger and the top levels are smaller. So I don't think they're equal. I don't think all of the energy is available. I think we're losing some as we get smaller. So I don't think it's letter A. Letter B, the producer level directly provides energy to all of the other levels. Okay, well, here's our producer level. And it does directly lead into the primary consumers. But does it directly go into secondary and tertiary? I don't see that being direct. The only one it's touching right here is primary. I don't think it's touching all of them and leading directly to all of them. So I don't think it's letter B. Letter C, the highest amount of energy is transferred between the levels that contain consumers. So the highest amount of energy, the biggest energy, that doesn't look like consumers. That looks like our producers again here, right? That's the big one, producers. So I don't think it's letter C. Letter D, energy is directly transferred from the primary consumers to the secondary consumers. Primary to secondary, yep, that's a pretty, they're touching, that's direct. So I think that one is correct. And we can check our answers here. And yep, there it is, letter D is correct. Question 3. All right, we got another chart here. So it's the title, first and foremost. Salt solubility at various temperatures. And I notice a lot of colors, and here's my key to explain the colors. And then I also want to note on a graph like this, the 2 titles for each side. So this side is increasing solubility. Don't worry about what solubility means. And then this one is temperature. We know what that is. And again, all these little letters here, don't worry about what they mean. They're not going to ask you what they mean. They're going to ask you to just read this chart. So now that we know where the parts of the chart are, let's take a look at the questions. So it says a scientist collects data on the solubility of different salts at different temperatures. The results are shown in the graph. So our question is going to be, what conclusion is supported by the data in the graph? So which one of these is correct based on what we see in the graph? Letter A says, solubility always increases as temperature increases. So we see temperature increasing this way and solubility increasing this way. Well, I see this purple line here. It's going down. Solubility goes down as temperature goes up. So always increases? I don't think so. And again, I don't like that word always. That's a difficult one. That's usually a tricky question. Letter B, at 40 degrees, KCl, whatever that is, don't worry, has the highest solubility of the salts in the table. So I'm going to find 40 degrees. I'm going to figure out what color KCl is, which is this green one. So I'm going to go 40 degrees right there. There's our KCl. It has the highest solubility. I don't know. This blue line and this pinkish red line look a little bit higher to me. So I don't think it has the highest. Let's mark out answer B. Letter C, the rate of change in the solubility of KNO3 changes as temperature increases. Okay, so KNO3, the change in the solubility as the temperature increases. So KNO3 is this blue color. So I follow this line and it's increasing, and as the more it goes up, the sharper the line becomes. So the rate of change, the rate of solubility changes as temperature increases. Temperature's increasing, the line's going up. I kind of like that one. Let's keep an eye on it, but let's check D as well. The solubility of NaCl does not increase with increasing temperatures above 80 degrees. So NaCl is the yellow line. So we're going to go up to 80 here. There's that. Well, it does not increase. That looks like a little increase. It's a small increase, but that line looks like it is increasing just a little bit. So I don't think it can be answer D. I think it has to be answer C. And let's check our answer here, and it is correct. All right, question 4, good news. they no longer require this short answer section on the science test. The only writing you have to do for the GED now is on the RLA section, so we can skip that. But we still need to read this passage for question 5. So before I read the passage, I like to read the question so I know what I'm looking for. So the question here says, which facts from the passage support the argument that parasitic fungi offer at best severely limited potential as insecticides that target many kinds of insects? So that's what I'm paying attention to here. Severely limited potential means they aren't very good at it. Targeting many kinds of insects. Okay, so we need to find out why this is not a good insecticide. That's the question. So let's take a look and notice at the top here, we have page 1 and page 2. We want to make sure we read both of them in order to truly understand the question. So let's start. Tropical rainforests contain diverse communities of organisms with many interesting relationships. One such relationship connects parasitic fungi and their insect hosts. A type of parasitic fungus called whatever, we don't need to know how to pronounce that, disperses spores onto the forest floor but cannot successfully grow on the ground. The fungus requires specific conditions and must grow inside of a specific ant species, called the host, to reproduce. The ants, various species of carpenter ant, make nests in the trees. Okay, so it only works for a specific ant species. That's interesting. Unilateralis, whatever, feeds on and grows inside the insect host, and within a few days, the fungus affects the insect's brain. The insect exhibits unusual behaviors, such as wandering away from the colony to where light and humidity favor fungal growth. Just before dying, the insect bites into and firmly attaches itself to a plant. Then, the fungus slowly grows outward from the dead insect's head, producing a pod of spores that eventually bursts open. The spores fall to the ground, restarting the life cycle of the fungus. Now remember, we're not done. Let's check out page 2. Though this relationship may sound gruesome, researchers note that these parasitic fungi may help maintain biodiversity in the tropical rainforest. Some parasitic fungi may be host-specific. Well, we talked about just that one ant before, so I'm going to mark that. Host-specific, meaning that a fungus species only infects a particular type of insect. Scientists have observed that if an insect population begins to grow, more fungal infections occur, and then the insect population levels off again. This relationship may prevent overpopulation of the habitat by any one insect species. We go back to the question and we notice here, it actually gives us some of the passage again, which is just from this section here. So again, which fact from the passage supports the argument that parasitic fungi offer, at best, severely limited potential as insecticides that target many kinds of insects? Basically, why does this fungi make for a bad insecticide? So letter A, the fungi reproduce inside the insect's body. That's a true sentence. It's from the passage, but does it really matter where it's reproducing? I don't think so. Letter B, the fungi entirely controls the insect behavior. Entirely. There's that always 100% word. And if I go back here, I don't really see that being true. It talks about it affecting the behavior, but entirely? 100%? It doesn't say that. All right, letter C, some of the fungi may be host-specific parasites. Well, we definitely saw that. So let's leave that one open. Letter D, some of the fungi produce pods that grow in the insect's head. Again, true, but is it really explaining why it's a bad pesticide or insecticide? It doesn't really have an effect on whether or not it makes a good insecticide. So it being host-specific is a good one because it mentions they only infect a particular type of insect. That's what it means to be host-specific. Well, would that make a good insecticide to kill bugs if it only affects one or two types of bugs? No, you want an insecticide that can kill a lot of different ones. So let's take a look. I think our answer is going to be C, and we are correct. Number 6. All right, I see a chart with a lot of numbers. Okay, So I see net force N, mass kg, acceleration N-s squared, okay? Now I noticed some patterns in this. It's always good to notice some of the patterns that they create. So I see 8 and 8, I see 16 and 16, 2, 4, 2, 4, okay? And then I see 4, 2 and 8, 4, so those numbers go down while these numbers go up. So patterns are always good to pay attention to. Now let's read. Newton's law of second motion states that the acceleration of an object is dependent on the object's mass and the amount of force applied to the object. So mass, we have our mass here, and force, I see that here. All right, the table shows data from an investigation of Newton's second law. Which statement describes the pattern established in the data included in a chart? Oh, look, we're looking for a pattern, which we've already kind of looked at. So letter A, let's take a look. A doubling of the net force increases acceleration 4 times when the object's mass is constant. Constant means it stays the same. Okay, so the net force, that's here, doubles. So we're going from 8 to 16, increases the acceleration 4 times. Well, we have 4 and we have 8. 4 times 4, that's 16, not 8. So that's incorrect. Letter B, let me erase some of these marks here before we get confused. So letter B says a doubling of the net force decreases. Okay, so doubling of the, well, let me get my pencil here. Doubling of the net force decreases acceleration 2 times. Well, we just said that doubling of net force 8 to 16 makes it go from 4 to 8. It's not decreasing, it's going up 4 up to 8. So that can't be right, it's not decreasing. Letter C, a doubling of the mass decreases the acceleration of the object by half when the net force is constant. So net force is constant, so that means we like this 8 and 8 here. So the doubling of the mass, 2 and 4, double 2, that's 4, so that works, decreases the acceleration by half. So acceleration goes from 4 to 2, half of 4 is 2, that works. Now let's take a look at the other numbers here. So net force is constant, doubling of the mass decreases by half. Well, it works there too, interesting. All right, but let's take a look at D before we set our answer for sure. Letter D says a doubling of mass increases the acceleration of an object 2 times. So doubling of mass increases acceleration by 2 times. So doubling of mass, that's 2 to 4, increases acceleration. Well, that's decreasing acceleration. It cannot be D. Therefore, I think the answer is C. So let's take a look. And we are correct, it is C. All right, next question here, question 7. Now, maybe you know what this picture is. They're called chromosomes, but you don't need to know that. Maybe you've never seen these images before in your life. That's okay, you don't need to know what they are, but it does help if you do. So I see the red one says paternal, okay, which maybe you know that word means father, but you don't need to know that. The blue one is maternal, like mother. They're connecting. They're trading colors here, and then the final product, look at this. They've both got a little bit of each other. Huh, interesting. It says the diagram shows an event that occurs during meiosis. What is meiosis? I don't know, doesn't matter. What is the result of this event? Now, okay, we can figure out the result of what's happening. So letter A says chromosomes that are genetically identical to the paternal chromosomes. So we said paternal. And then we're looking at this one. What is the result? The result is going to be the last thing, right? Are these identical to this paternal red one? No, it's got a little blue now, so that can't be right. Letter B, chromosomes that are genetically identical to the maternal one. Well, same problem. Maternal is blue, but this one has a little red. They're not identical. Letter C, chromosomes that are a genetic combination of the parent chromosomes. Well, combination, little red, little blue. That looks pretty good. But let's look at D just in case. Chromosomes that contain a different amount of genetic information than the parents. A different amount. They look the same size to me. These ones are the same size as these ones. So I don't think that can be correct. So the only option now is C. And we can check our answers, and we are correct. All right, number 8, we got another reading passage here. So again, I like to read the question first. It says, which excerpt from the text supports this inference? Inference is like guessing, educated guessing. So it says, scientists inference, from the investigation that fish raised in water with higher levels of acidity have difficulty hearing predatory sounds. All right, more acid, more difficulty hearing sounds. All righty, so let's read it. Again, 2 pages, make sure we read both of them. It says, dissolved carbon dioxide gas creates CO2, creates carbonic acid in ocean water. Rising ocean acidity levels may harm marine life. For example, high acid levels may cause hearing loss. All right, acid levels cause hearing loss. Scientists conducted an investigation to study the effect of increased acidity on fish hearing. Okay, so we're going to study how the acid affects their hearing. A group of fertilized fish eggs from the same parent were divided into 4 different aquariums, each with a different pressure of CO2. One tank contained the normal atmospheric conditions of 390 micro whatevers. The other tank contained more, and more, so different levels of this whatever of CO2 respectively. The same number of eggs was placed into each aquarium. The eggs hatched, the fish lived in these aquariums until testing. To prepare for the experiment, one fish was placed into an aquarium containing the same CO2 pressure in which it was raised. The fish's position was recorded every 5 seconds for 2 minutes. Then sounds from a predatory fish were played from an underwater speaker at the end of one aquarium at a volume that was only audible to the fish when swimming near the speaker. The fish's position was again recorded every 5 seconds for 2 minutes. Trials were repeated with fish from each tank. Okay, so they're putting them in that acid water, putting a sound at the end, seeing if they swim towards the sound or away from the sound. All right, I'm with it so far. Next page, make sure we hit both of them. The study showed that fish raised in elevated CO2 levels did not avoid the sounds of the predator fish. They spent approximately the same proportion of time at the speaker end of this aquarium before and after the sounds of the predatory fish were played. However, the fish from the aquarium with the normal CO2 avoided the speaker end of the aquarium after the predator sounds were played. Okay, interesting. So again, what excerpt from the text supports the inference that the higher levels of acidity, the more difficulty they have hearing sounds? So let's take a look. Letter A, rising ocean acidity levels may harm marine life. For example, high acid levels may cause hearing loss. That is true. However, that's just background information. That's just kind of telling us what's happening. It's not really explaining the data or the evidence. So I don't love that one. So let me go ahead and mark that through. Letter B, then sounds from a predatory fish were played from an underwater speaker at one end of the aquarium at a volume that was only audible to the fish when swimming near the speaker. Again, true, that did happen. But does it tell me why it happened? Is there evidence? Is there an explanation for what they were doing here? There's no data. There's no results of what they were doing. So I don't love that one either. Letter C, the other tanks contain 600, 700, 900. Again, that's explaining the experiment, but I want to know what the results from the experiment are. So I don't think that explains it. Letter D, the study showed that fish raised in elevated CO2 levels did not avoid the sounds of the predator fish. Well, now that one kind of explains why this is an important study, what the evidence and results of the experiment were, right? Because remember, the beginning parts here. Scientists infer from the investigation that fish raised in water with higher levels of acidity have difficulty hearing predatory sounds. What supports this? Here, They did not avoid the sounds. The predator fish is the fish that wants to eat them. They swam towards that fish because they couldn't hear them. So I think that does prove that the acid levels affected their hearing. So let's check our answers. And we are correct, it is D. Now, question 9, it's the same passage. You don't need to read it again unless you just want to. But as long as you still feel it's fresh in your mind, don't worry about reading the whole thing again. The question is, identify the independent and dependent variable in the investigation. Drag and drop the correct variable into each box. So independent here, dependent here, and I've got some options. Now, you do need to know a little bit about independent and dependent variables on this test. So I think of independent and dependent as like a cause and effect, right? I'm a reading teacher, so I really like to cause and effect in readings. So your independent variable is kind of what you are changing, what you are doing. It's kind of the cause of of the things that you're kind of making levels of. So we made levels of CO2, right? I think it said it had 300, 600, 700, 900. So we're controlling that. We are causing that to change because we're doing it. Whereas dependent, if someone is dependent on you, they need you. You kind of influence them. So that's the effect of the experiment and what's happening. So what happens because they change the CO2 pressure? Well, I would say that changes the position of the fish. That effect, that causes them to move or not move away from that fish that wants to eat them. So let's check it there, and we are correct. The CO2 pressure is independent and the position of fish is dependent. All right, last question, question number 10. Again, we have a nice little chart here. Let's read the title, Bone Density Data. And I noticed kind of the titles for each section. We have sample, 1, 2, 3, 4, nothing much there. Mass and volume. Okie dokie, let's read. Researchers collected data to determine volumetric bone density for 4 samples. The data are recorded in the table below. What is the average bone density for the data samples provided? So the bone density, and I see this mathematical equation, the density equals mass divided by volume. So that's important for us to recognize. We want to do mass, over volume. That is our mathematical equation. Nothing too difficult here. We just need to put the M over the V with these numbers here. So the average for all 4. Now, we do have a calculator on here. Unfortunately, it's not an actual working calculator. Don't know why, but it doesn't. So I have my phone here, but on the real GED test, you will be given the calculator that you need. So for number 1, M is 6.8 and V is 22.6. So I would do 6.8 divided by 22.6. Whoops, excuse my handwriting. And I'll put that in my calculator. And I get 0.300 about. So I can put that here, 0.300. And I'm going to do the same thing for number 2, 1.7 divided by 5.4. And that's about 0.31. So I'll do that, 0.31. Number 3, 3.6 divided by 11.3. That's about 3.18, so we can round that up to 3.2, or 0.32 rather, 2, okay. And number 4, 5.2 divided by 17.4, that's about 0.298, which I'll round up to 0.30. Beautiful handwriting here, I know. Now, to get an average, which is what they're asking here, I can add all 4 of those together and divide them by 4, which is how many samples we have. I can also look at these and see that it's about 0.3, and wouldn't you know it, 0.31. That's pretty close. So let's check our answers there, and we are correct. And that does take us to the end of the GED practice on the GED website for science tests. So again, the link to this test is going to be in the video description. So I encourage you to click it and try it yourself. and see how you do.